Welcome back to GTD. I'm Micah Farmer, joined as always by Keegan Miller, and it's time to talk about NASCAR's first International Cup points race since the 50s at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City, Mexico. And Keegan, it was a pretty good race for the first half of it. A lot of very close racing back and forth, some beating and banging, and then SVG locked in. And Shane Van Gisbergen really drove off at the end of this one, gets his win. He is into the playoffs. Trackhouse got what they wanted from SVG, get the extra bonus charter payouts, and SVG has locked his spot into the field of 16 with an absolutely dominant performance, the largest margin of victory in a non-fuel mileage affected NASCAR race since the 90s. How about that?
Yep. Yeah, and largest in next gen history, obviously. Like 14 seconds, incredible.
16.
We knew was it 16? So we knew going into it that he was going to be a player, and in either this weekend, Chicago, Sonoma, Watkins Glen, the road course summer we have, if you will, he was going to be up front no matter what. And I think if you were to pick like a weekend, it'd probably be this one, just because it's a new court for everybody. And if you're leveling the playing field that way, SVG, who's a premier road course racer, is going to be at the top. If it's Watkins Glen or Sonoma, where all those guys in the field have been there a lot at this point, it's a little more. He's at a little bit of a disadvantage in that sense, just the familiarity of it. But we saw. Chicago now, Mexico. If it's a new track and you turn right, you could pretty much just just hand him the win at this point. But I am a little sad that it rained. I know a lot of people love racing in the rain and on road courses. I like to see tracks at their full potential, at full speed, especially at Mexico with that long, start finish line stretch where they could pack. We could have seen pack racing. We saw the first restart, some like Talladega style pack racing for a little bit before they fan out and, dump everybody to turn one. But still exciting race.
Yeah, for sure. And I always like racing in the rain. I think it makes everything a little bit more interesting. But I do wish NASCAR, I've had this complaint now for about 3 years. I wish NASCAR would treat the race teams like professional race teams and let them decide when to put on the rain tires versus the dry tires, have it fully independent, and don't throw cautions for it. I think that would make the rain a lot more interesting. And I get the safety issue, but also if you're a professional racing driver and you can tell it's raining, maybe don't go flat out on the slicks and you won't fly off into a wall, is all I'm saying. You can make it back around one more lap if you want to stop for rain tires.
Well, I will say that to their credit this year, they did let them at least choose the tire compound. Now, they did, mandate the caution and make them all come down pit road who were going to choose instead of just letting, keeping it green and let them come down on their own. But at least they let them, stick with what compound they wanted to. And who knows, if it had been raining a little harder, I'm sure they would have stepped in and mandated the wet weathers. But since it was just a little drizzle for about 15 minutes, they kind of just let the teams choose the compound. And only 2 guys stayed out on slicks, and we'll get to that. But that's why I like rain in F1, because there is so much. It's normal for them. They do it all the time. The FIA doesn't step in every 5 minutes and make sure they're doing things right.
Nowadays in F1, the wet tire is completely useless because once it gets that wet, it's pointless, and they send them all under red flag. So racing as a whole needs to figure out the rain a little bit better. But let's stay in the Cup Series right now, and let's talk about that rain tire strategy you mentioned before we get into some of our top finishers. It was Austin Cindric and Chris Buescher who decided to hang out there on the dry tires, and I think 2 of the guys who honestly had top 10 cars today. Cindric ended up 18th, I believe. Yeah, it ended up down the field in 18th, but Chris Buescher still finished 10th, and those guys both had quick cars. Just, I'm not sure that was the correct decision in the moment, especially for Austin Cindric. You could tell once he started losing a couple spots, that 2 car dropped like a rock through the rest of that race. But they still had decent speed. I believe Cindric over median lap average was 7th in speed on the day, so that 2 car definitely had something in it. I'm not sure that was the right call at the time, and considering it was a just kind of sit in place, do what we've been doing call that was incorrect, I'm surprised Alan Gustafson didn't choose it as well.
Yeah, you and me both. But I do think that with it just being 2 guys, 100%, like, what are we doing? Because at that point, you don't have anything to lose. You're just pretty much, you may gain a spot or 2 on pit road, but it's pretty much just restarting the race over on rain tires, right? Like, you're not.
And I get it for Cindric because he does have the win. I don't get it for Buescher.
Right. Like, you're not gaining an advantage staying out there unless the track would stay dry. But you knew it was raining, you knew more raining was coming, and it would just stick to the track. So I don't get taking the risk that way. If you're going to take the risk, you would try to do it the other way, maybe like stay out on the rain or put the reins back on if it's supposed to rain or something. But I don't get taking the risk there on lap 2 when everyone else is doing something. You're not really, you just restart the race at that point. And Buscher was in a better spot than Cindric, I believe, like by a spot or two at that point. So like you knew you had speed because you qualified well. So what are you doing? Like you need points. You need to finish well, right? Like that wasn't going to give you the win. It was lap 2.
Yeah.
So I don't really get it in that scenario. But I'm never really going to harp on crew chiefs for doing something different, even though it doesn't work out, because it could have worked out. If it stopped raining 10 minutes earlier, they
look
probably
like geniuses.
get away with it. Yeah. So I don't hate on I keep wanting to say quarterbacks in my head, but that's what they are, crew chiefs for doing the wrong calls or whatever. But yeah, so strategy ended up being a savior for one of the guys. That's SVG, who we just talked about, winning the race. He elected to stay out. He stayed out on the stage break and he came back in.
Typical road course flipping the stages.
Yeah, but it hung Ty Gibbs, who elected to not do that, and caution followed where it needed to fall for someone, didn't need to fall for someone else.
Gibbs is really the only guy that could hang with SVG all day. That 54 was bad fast and got caught out on the late pit cycle, ended up having to come down, make a stop, restarted outside the top 10, and then once he got behind Ross Chastain, just could not get past the 1. Chase Elliott got by him, ended up working his way all the way up to 3rd by the end of the race, and I think we would agree Gibbs was much faster than Elliott in clean air for a lot of the day. So where could Ty Gibbs have gotten? I think probably 2nd. I don't think anyone would have had anything for SVG, even Ty Gibbs on that last run. He was just cruising. But the 54, they are at least are showing speed now. This is a team that knows they need to win, and 2 consecutive weeks bringing top 5 speed and the 1 top 5 finish to show for it at Michigan. I think the 54 is kind of turning it around, and if they're going to bring speed to these road courses, you got a lot of chances left to go. And then you think high-speed Michigan, does any of that maybe translate to Indianapolis for the 54? So Ty Gibbs definitely has momentum right now, is going in the right direction. But back to the rain, Kyle Busch, we need to talk about that incident because he tried to get a little bit too aggressive in the rain, in the brakes into turn 1, and proceeded to go bowling. I don't know how many of you are F1 fans and remember the Valtteri Bottas Hungary bowling incident, but it was very reminiscent of that from a few years ago. Just completely locked the rear axle, went spinning, obliterated Justin Haley, Kyle Larson, AJ Allmendinger, who somehow managed to get that car to a top 15. I have no idea how, but
it's AJ Allmendinger. That's why.
Yeah, skill, but absolutely obliterated Justin Haley and Kyle Larson. I think that was one of the hardest hits I've seen for a car. And then for Larson's car to be able to go back out and set the fastest lap later. I know they repaired the front axle still, but the way the impact that 8 had on the 5 looked like it was absolutely junked.
Yeah. No, it definitely looked like the day was over. But I mean, if there's any team out there that can salvage a day like that, it's Cliff Daniels and his guys. I mean, they do it time and time again. We see it. I mean, you've seen it all the way back. I know this wasn't a completely different team, but it reminds me of the Roval when he needed to move on. The first ever, 2018, when he just pieced together that car, and it just looked like a half-built car in a shop that you'd see on a Monday morning at Penske or whatever, and he just pieced it together and moved on to the playoffs that year. But yeah, it's just incredible job for that team to get that car up and moving again. But so, what are your thoughts on Mexico as a whole? Like the whole weekend, you had the Xfinity race with Daniel Suarez winning. That was electric for him. The crowd, NASCAR. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better result in that race than the hometown guy coming and winning. But what are your thoughts just on the weekend as a whole, the racing, like everything accumulative as far as NASCAR in Mexico and internationally?
I absolutely loved it. I think it was great. The Xfinity race showed out, and Daniel Suarez winning was obviously a great story. I saw a couple people, and I know you even mentioned this, a little worried that the grandstands maybe weren't as full as they are from an F1 race. I think the weather maybe played a little bit of a factor in that, the fact that it's raining. And then you looked outside, and the drivers were getting mobbed like superstars. I assume you saw the picture of Todd Gilliland with like 80 people around him. And if all the drivers are getting treated like that, much less what Daniel Suarez was getting thrown at him all weekend, it feels sustainable. And this feels like something NASCAR can go back to, because if the reception is going to be like this, and as someone who's watched F1 for a few years, the reception for F1 in Mexico is always electric. And so there were so many fans who were excited to see their favorite drivers in person. And with how big of a city Mexico City is, I assure you there were fans that wanted to go to that race that weren't able to this year that you could maybe count on coming in the future. And this is such a cool environment. The track did so well. The racing was great all weekend long. I definitely think NASCAR should try to come back here because I don't know about you, but this is a million times better than a second Richmond date.
Yeah, I'm with you. I loved it as well. I love the environment and just everything, all the entertainment factor that just came with it. Besides, the race itself, in both races with the Xfinity and the Cup race, and it's when you do something when an organization or a sports league does something like this, it's always gonna be cheaper the more you do it. Like it's the most expensive time you do it is the first time with all the planning and everything that goes into making this happen. That's the most expensive time. Next year, you already know what to do, right? Next year, the money's just the transferring everything, getting everything to Mexico City. And now you know what to do with the infrastructure and all the portable stuff that you brought, put up and put back down. You have a better system for it next time you go. So it will be more economical in the future if they go to this specific track.
Yeah, and you're not paying $50 million a year to build it like Chicago.
Right. And what I hope didn't happen, and I probably should have looked into this. I hope NASCAR didn't go into Mexico doing an F1 move right now and going, oh, we're NASCAR. They'll come to us and just making the tickets super expensive because you've seen that with sporting events around the world now. And it's biting F1 in the butt. You see Las Vegas is coming out and advertising like, hey, we're making tickets as cheap as possible because they have to because F1 came in and was just like, oh, we're F1. They'll come see us. And then we didn't. And everyone was like,
yeah,
oh, like it is too expensive. So I hope NASCAR didn't go in there and just make it really expensive.
I don't know for sure either, but just knowing general NASCAR ticket prices for a lot of events this year that I've been looking at, I doubt they were crazy expensive because even the tickets to Bowman Gray, which were in super high demand, were not outrageously expensive to start the year. So again, you have conversion rates, so maybe it's a little bit more expensive if you're buying it in Mexico versus America. But either way, I doubt NASCAR is price gouging anywhere near the extent that F1 is.
And one more question. Do you think I'm going to ask, I guess, same question, but two different answers. Is there a better chance and what do you want to happen? Is there a better chance that NASCAR goes back to Mexico City or goes somewhere else internationally? And what do you want to happen? Do you want them to go back to Mexico or do you want another, venue?
I would absolutely love for NASCAR to come back to Mexico. And weirdly, I'm not saying this is how it should be, but I kind of think the decision to go back or not will be affected by what happens with Daniel Suarez at the end of this year. If Daniel Suarez is retained by Trackhouse, I could way easily see NASCAR going back as, oh, we have our face of the sport for this event again. But maybe if Suarez isn't retained by Trackhouse and Connor Zilic fills that seat, they start to wonder, oh, is it worth it doing this? Is when we're not going to have our main attraction in this country? And honestly, I think there's still a chance that Daniel Suarez would go back to an Xfinity Series ride if he doesn't stay with Trackhouse. And if that was the case, then I could absolutely see NASCAR coming back to Mexico regardless. I think they should. I hope they do. But I think that circumstance might affect it a little bit. But regardless, the weekend seemed like a huge success. So I want to say that they would still at least attempt to do it one more year anyway.
Yeah, and in the Americas, they can't really go overseas. So I don't think,
especially
Japan's
how many
in the
races
picture.
there are.
Right. So I don't think Japan's in the picture or anywhere in Europe. I don't think that's in the future or the near future, next 5-10 years probably. So it would have to be Canada, Mexico. I mean, you have some tracks you have Brazil, obviously, but even then, that's like kind of going overseas. I mean, it is with the Panama.
It's a long way.
Right. It's a flight either way. So it'd probably have to just be Mexico City or Canada.
Montreal.
And I don't know if there's the excitement, draw, and fans in Canada to pull that one off. I know a lot of Americans would probably go to that one, but I think that'd be too much. I don't think that would be as successful as Mexico City, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Mexico has more of a NASCAR fan base presence than a lot of Canada, at least from what I've seen. I could be wrong, but at least from what I've seen, That's how I feel about it. But overall, I love the Mexico weekend. I hope NASCAR does it again. But let's move on to talking about some more drivers, and let's get into the Stenhouse of R, as I'm calling it, incident from this week. And first off, Carson Hocevar, absolute horror show of a weekend. Bad qualifying lap, was off track, I believe, 3 different times, spun or off track 3 different times during the race. And the last one, he locked up and hit the back of Ricky Stenhouse. Obviously not intentional, but still, if there's any guy you can't hit in that moment, if you're Carson Hocevar, it's Ricky Stenhouse. And
the guy you hit
sent the 47 spinning. And this is after Stenhouse had already narrowly avoided being obliterated by Riley Herbst, which we'll talk about in a minute. But after the race, Stenhouse came up into Hocevar's window and just started yelling at him through the driver's side door there. Just, yeah, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you. And then he's like, oh, I can't do it now because we're in Mexico, which I kind of don't. What's the limitation on beating up someone in Mexico? But I don't know. Either way, Stenhouse, I think, definitely owes him one at this point. If you're Carson Hocevar, I think that's overstepping the line. Even if it is an accident, that's one thing you cannot do in that situation. So I would expect some payback from Ricky Stenhouse in the next couple weeks to the 77.
Well, what Stenhouse has said numerous times over his career is he does not like giving payback on the racetrack. And to his credit, there hasn't been a lot of examples of him doing so, giving payback on the racetrack at least.
Yeah, because a lot of his incidents are just making big blocks at super speedways. When you look at his career, a lot of the wrecks that involve him, that's what it is. He's not a guy that's usually going to go just clean you out for no reason, despite his reputation as a bit of an accident-prone guy.
Right. So I think, he kind of said this. I don't know how much he'll back this up, but he said his payback will be hand-to-hand combat. Like he said, it's not going to be on the racetrack. It's going to be off the racetrack. I don't know what that'll look like, but
Hocevar's 6'5".
Right, but you can't get done at Pocono. Let's say they both run the top 20. You can't get done at Pocono and then just walk over to him post-race at Pocono and start fighting about something that happened a week ago. Like that's just not how it works. So I'm not sure.
I don't think you can't wreck a guy at Pocono either. I think that is far too dangerous of a track to just ship a guy at.
Yeah, so I don't. And then at that point, then you're wrecking a guy 3 weeks later. I don't know what the payback would be. I think he should have just got it done in Mexico. Not sure. I'm sure NASCAR's on the drivers like, hey, let's not do anything. We're not. Let's just be really clean.
What do you think the statute of limitations is on NASCAR beef?
Oh, I'm sure they have like a color coded handbook they have to follow. Like you don't see it anymore. Now I know they're all friends and everything nowadays, or most of them are friends, but you just don't see it anymore. So obviously NASCAR has a handle on things like that. And even when we do see it, like at the All-Star race with the Stenhouse and Busch, it was kind of just like, hey, whoa, hey. And then that was it. So
yeah,
would I like there to be something more, especially with Hocevar and Stenhouse? Absolutely. Like that would make my day. But I don't think anything.
Who was it that Michael McDowell fought at Phoenix and kept his helmet on for the fight? Who was that?
It was Suarez, wasn't it?
Oh, you're right. It was. Yeah.
Yeah. It was Daniel Suarez.
I feel like that's forgotten NASCAR fight because it wasn't really a. But move on from confrontations here and sticking with Ricky Stenhouse though. Riley Herbst. Oh my goodness, I was so ready to come on the podcast and be like, man, I've dogged on Riley Herbst, but he finally had a good weekend because he qualified in the top 20. He was running top 15 for a good portion of the early part of this race, then starts to drop back, gets spun out heading into the stadium section. I forget who by, but got spun out. It wasn't his own fault. But then coming back on the track was just like, I'm going to go now, and went just in front of the entire field. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. almost got absolutely smacked. That would have been a T-bone collision into the side of the 35, and he's done this before in the Xfinity series at Sonoma, pulled back on the track and almost cleaned out a guy at Sonoma through the S's. So someone needs to have a conversation with Riley Herbst of like, this is how to rejoin the track. This is how to not rejoin the track. You can't just come back on whenever you feel like it. And I feel bad because this was on track to be the first decent weekend for Riley Herbst as a Cup driver, and it just got absolutely ruined by whatever the heck that was.
Yeah, and even in a weekend when 2311 showed absolutely zero speed, but
they're awful.
So it would have been extra special for Riley Herbst to go out there and outperform his team, if you will. But man, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. dodging bullets over the weekend. You had the Hocevar incident, this incident, Brad Keselowski. Well, what they called was Brad Keselowski's fault, but he kind of just gave him no room. It was racing incident at that point. But yeah, he was all over everything in the race. So at some point, is it bad luck or is he in the wrong place at the wrong time? Is it the guy behind the wheel? So
that's not the guy behind the wheel. He's just been in the storm this year. But I think it is time we have to have the conversation with SVG winning this race.
Oh, yes.
He gets a free playoff spot. Yes, he gets a free playoff spot and was 34th or 33rd in points. Missed the in-season tournament entirely because of how low he was in points. And now is racing for a championship. And I think this conversation is an even worse one if we were to do it about a month ago when he had shown no ability to race an oval in the Cup Series at all. But even still now, he's 15th to 20th at a lot of the recent ovals, and obviously is going to be up there for the road courses. And as of right now, I mean, I'm not blaming SVG for this because there's not really anything he can do about it. It's a savvy move from Trackhouse to know the rules and bring in a guy that's going to get you paid more money at the end of the year. But winning you're in. Thoughts?
Well, winning you're in. It's not like you can just come out and say, "Oh, winning you're in," unless it's a road course. So like I've seen people throw that around. Like can't do that.
Dumb.
You can't
make it
road courses. But I've always kind of been a proponent of winning you're in because it's so hard to do in the sport nowadays, especially with how all the cars are equal. That I've always kind of been like, yeah, if you put straight together a weekend, you should be in. But with all the different pieces that come into NASCAR and how drivers get there, because it's not just about working your way through the ranks, it's about bringing money. So a guy like SVG comes over from supercars and he brings the money and he gets a cup ride. Congratulations, But then he's really good at one thing.
And brings a lot of talent at road courses too.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Really good at one thing, and he'll get better at the ovals. I'm not saying he's not going to have a career in the sport. He'll find speed at the ovals. He's a talented driver. It just sucks that we're having this conversation, I guess. But I think it's just because the sport is in a very unique spot that it's ever been in before. I mean, back then it was just stock car racing, you made your way up. Now you have guys coming from all over the world trying to get to NASCAR, and they do. So they're good at different things. And NASCAR themselves are adopting that method with all the road courses we have. They're trying to span out and make it all unique and have all these different tracks. And I think it's good for the sport, but I think you have to change your playoff format for that to work, because now you're losing a lot of your fans going, "Ooh, well, that's not good that this guy can be 33rd and win in points or win a race and get in." So I think, I don't know. Do you think, I think they should just go 2 wins, 2 wins and you're in. Other than that, top 16 in points.
I could see that.
I'd be perfectly fine with that.
The one that I like personally that I've seen thrown around is winning you're in. You have to be top 25 in points for it to apply, because previously you had the top 30 rule. I like top 25. If you look at the point standings right now,
I'd be okay with that.
The guys that would be ineligible that are outside of the top 25 for winning you're in: Todd Gilliland, Austin Dillon, Daniel Suarez, Justin Haley, SVG, Ty Dillon, Brad Keselowski, Noah Gragson, Cole Custer, Riley Herbst, Cody Ware. And I think we would agree that out of the way they've run this season, none of those guys really deserve a playoff spot on a full season body of work. However, if you look at the guys just inside the top 25, Zane Smith had some top 10 runs this year. Ty Gibbs showing speed now. The 2 legacy cars, Ricky Stenhouse, Carson Hocevar. So it feels like that 25th place spot is kind of the cut of where you can see, okay, I could see those people maybe making some noise and advancing in a playoff round if they string some good results together. And then below the line of, well, I find it highly unlikely they do much of anything. So I personally like that. I think it would be a fairly good setup. Obviously, nothing's going to be perfect. And honestly, the fact that we're talking so much about playoff seeding in a motorsport still is ridiculous to me, but it is what it is.
Well, here's the good news for SVG. You have the win. You know that. So I would fully expect your next...
Could get more, too.
Even at road courses, I don't think they should go for the wins. I think they should go for this, because they're going to be up front. I don't think they should revert or flip the stages. They need the stage points, because guess what? If they squeak through the first round of the playoffs, 3 races, put 3 good races together with enough playoff points in your bank, you have the Roval.
Too. That's why I put him in the third round of the playoffs at the start of the year.
Yeah, he could easily be in the third round of the playoffs. Just so, do you agree with what I'm saying though? Like, get the stage wins at road courses and maybe sacrifice your wins.
I do not agree at all, because SVG is so much better than everyone else in the road courses. If at Sonoma he has this kind of speed, and you can see in the first couple stages he has the speed on the field, guess what gives more than one stage or more than one playoff point? The win. You get 5. So I think it's worth going for those 5 playoff points, because at that point, if you know you're a long shot to advance anyway, why not go for 5 times the playoff points if you can? I think it's worth it, and especially if you look at how the grid's shaping up this year, you have the 3 drivers in Larson, Bell, and Hamlin with 3 wins. Outside of that, it's just everyone else with 1. So if SVG is able to win 1 or 2 more road course races, suddenly you enter the playoffs as the 4 seed possibly, or once the regular season playoff points are divvied out, maybe like the 6 seed, and that's a good spot to be in going into the first round. So I think you keep going for wins.
Well, I think you can, I think if you're SVG and you have the speed you have at Mexico, you can do both. If Mexico plays out as a normal clean race and he wins both stages, I think he's got the speed to not flip the stage in stage 2, drive through the 15 cars he'd have to drive through? I think he does it. He had 50 laps. I think he still wins the race. So if you have that kind of speed, actually, I think you play for stage points, and then you're going to be up in the top 5 right in the race. Maybe not win, but you have a better chance of winning than anyone else on the field at that point. So get the stage points, lock down your points, and then go battle for the lead, because I think he could do both.
That would definitely be fun to see. I would like to see that. But before we wrap up here for Mexico, let's go through our picks from the race right quick. I went for Tyler Reddick to win. Possibly the worst race pick I've done in the season. I was looking at his next-gen road course finishes. The guy's been great. Has almost won Chicago before hitting the wall. And this weekend has no speed. And 2311 as a whole, I want to talk about this later this week when we do our Pocono preview, is what has happened to 2311 speed, especially for Tyler Reddick. I think it's officially time to say he's having a down year at this point. Yep. Still no wins, not a ton of speed, has struggled at tracks he normally loves like Michigan and Homestead. They can't finish races, and just added to it this week with no pace at all at Mexico. And then my dark horse was Noah Gragson. Was pretty terrible the entire weekend, spun out a couple times during the race, and finished 30th. So great weekend for me. How'd your predictions go?
Yeah, so I had Chris Buescher, who, we talked about in the show with his strategy. Who knows how the day would have ended if he had, gone with the pack and put on the wet tires. But still came to a top 10, finished 10th overall, which showed good speed. I knew he would have good speed here just because he has good speed at every road course. And he's going to be a force to be reckoned with during the summer stretch when we have, the next 3 road courses coming up. So he's never a bad pick, and I'm happy with this pick. Like I said, had the speed. Strategy, I think, cost him maybe a top 5. I don't think he would have been faster than, SVG, but maybe he could have been up there with Elliott and Bell there towards the end. And then I went all RFK. My second pick was Brad Keselowski, because I'm like, well, we know Buescher's got speed, so maybe he'll bring some speed with him in RFK. And he didn't.
No.
Priest had an okay day, had an okay car.
Had a stage win.
But he brought no speed. We're not even going to talk about that. It's been the exact same race he's had all season.
Yeah, so copy-paste most Brad Keselowski race recaps, except for Kansas and North Wilkesboro, honestly, for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and you didn't even get points in North Wilkesboro. So, great race. I even said in that race recap, I was like, he didn't get points, but he got momentum, and it lasted a week, I think.
Yeah, it didn't work. But a couple quick things before we get out of here. Some drivers to shout out that had great runs today. Or this past weekend, not today, as we record this. Alex Bowman, big bounce back after the hard hit at Michigan, finished 4th. Michael McDowell, top 5. John Hunter Nemechek came home 6th. Legacy's speed with one car, the other continues to show up week after week. And honestly, Eric Jones finishing 17th in that beat-up car deserves some commendation, because he has the worst average finish of any driver that started all next-gen road course races. And then my driver of the day, other than SVG, is Cole Custer, who showed up in 8th by doing nothing and pretty much just existing, driving a clean race. So great race for Cole Custer and Haas Factory Team, getting a top 10, which I believe, is that their first or second of the year? I know they don't have a lot. That was the first top 10 of the year for Cole Custer and Haas Factory Team. So congratulations, nice. Mr. Custer. And then quick little playoff bubble check-in. Ryan Preece is now the first car outside. He is 19 points behind Chris Buescher, who occupies the last spot. So the RFK battle at the cut line rages on. But that is it for our Mexico race recap. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. It was a very fun race. Loved the international event. It was a good time. And if you want some more NASCAR content, we'll be back later in the week to preview Pocono, Triangles, and then F1 content will also be out on the channel about a wild Canadian finish in the Canadian GP at Montreal, where Lando Norris decided to see if he could drive through the back of Oscar Piastri, and surprisingly, it didn't work out. But that's it for today. That's been Keegan. I've been Micah. We'll see you later this week on GTD.